Okay, everybody stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Repeat after me. I'm so happy because I'm on the right track. Yes, I'm happy. There's no turning back. The purpose of this class is to cooperate, to communicate, to educate, on time, on task, on target, on to college. Good morning. Let's take our attendance. Oh, I'll take attendance. I'll take attendance from here. It's easier. No. Let me find the attendance. Here, stop. Oh, here it is. Daily attendance link. When I call your name, say here, or if the person's muted, what's going on? Where's the attendance link? There's STEM. There you are. Okay, when I call your name, Queen Aguilera. Somebody just look to see if he's there.
He's here.
Good. Let's start. Mari Carmen.
Here.
Good morning. Andrew.
Here.
Perfect attendance. Alexis. Obviously. Oscar.
Here.
Oscar. Oscar.
I don't see him in the chat.
Okay. Mauricio.
Here.
Good work. Anaya.
Here.
The Claybrooks are never absent. Liam.
He's here.
Yeah. Bates. Caesar.
Don't see him.
Ariana.
Here.
That was not Ariana. That was not a very convincing here. Jocelyn. Jocelyn.
She's not here.
Bueller. Bueller. Isabella. Show me the magic, kid. Isabella. Going once.
Don't.
Twice. 3 times a lady. Jose.
He's here.
Okay, good work. My bad. My eyes. My eyes are so. Brandon Lozano.
Here.
Good work. You just little pep in the voice this morning, please. I don't see. Wait, who's that? Oh, my bad. I skipped Edward. Edward, are you there, Lenoir? Edward.
Don't see him.
Yeah.
Well, Mother McCree. Now, how do I? Jimmy.
Here.
All right. Natalie.
Here.
Good work. Sebastian.
Here.
That's how you say here. Like late night FM radio, 1973. Email me on the site for your extra credit. Fanny.
Here.
I didn't forget about that book. It's in the basement. You'll read it someday. Marcelo. Got him. Brian. That's to move on. Mark.
Marcelo's here.
My bad. Good work. You are now the attorney and legal counsel for Marcelo Nava. Mark Vick. Mark Vick. Mark Vick. Avrola Perescovitis.
He's here.
Eric.
Here.
Good. Rosalind.
Here.
Okay, good. Brandon Skinner. Skinner.
Not here.
Johnny. My bad, Elijah. Elijah. Johnny.
He's here.
Juan Carlos.
Not here. He
That's
hasn't been here for what?
Yeah,
2 days?
that will be addressed. Don't worry about that. Alexandra.
Here.
Good. Kevin.
Here.
Good. Peter.
Here.
Mr. Edwards. Yo. All right. Just know this. A normal average kind of person, when they take attendance, whether it's in class for the Army or whatever, they say here. Rebel radicals like us. We say, yo. Somebody say, Mr. Edwards. Alexis. Like you're taking attendance. Mr. Edwards.
Mr. Edwards.
Yo. One more time, we'll practice. Mr. Edwards, go.
Mr. Edwards.
Yo. Now, we're not going to pick on anybody, just randomly. Ariana, I see your name right there. We're going to try it now. Ariana, unmute.
Yes.
Okay, I'm taking attendance. Smith, Jones, Gutierrez,
I'm confused. What are we doing?
Okay, we'll get you pay attention. We're gonna try it again. Who can do it? We're learning to be cool while taking attendance. What do you think we're doing? All right, we'll try it one more time. Elijah, unmute. Jones, Martinez, Lopez, Pasquale, Okay, everybody stop. Do you not know your line, Eric? Or Elijah? Okay, stop. Alexis, show them how it's done. You ready, Alexis?
Yeah, isn't it Mr. Edwards?
No, the answer is yo.
Oh,
Thank you, Liam. Never tried so hard in my life to get a couple of kids to be cool. What do you think Fonzie would say? Here. Fonzie would say, yo, Mrs. C. All right, we're moving on. We'll try it again tomorrow. Your homework, in addition to all the other homework, is to practice being cool. Okay, I don't need to practice. It's just when we were in the prep schools where everything had to be rigid and uniform, and if you whispered in class, they made you write out the oratories of Caesar's battlefields in Latin for 3 hours till 6 p.m. and you had to walk 11 miles home with your hand cramped. We tried everything we could to break the hierarchical systems of structure. And one day in class, one kid as bold as hell, who went down as a legend, during Father Bell's attendance, he said, yo. And that's when we knew we were in the presence of Mr. Cool. All right, let's move on. All right, I am so apologetic. I don't know how, but I erased all the class notes. I don't know why I was gambling with those notes and not saving them, but wouldn't be the first time I lost a major piece of... Okay, here's what we're going to do. Let's start with the Raven. Are we ready? Let's go. Academy of American Poets. We call it Poetry Foundation. And then the Raven. So here we have stanza 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's review. Stanza 1, it's midnight, a dreary evening. There's a rapping at the door. Stanza 2, that reminds him of his lost love, Lenore. Is that Lenore at the door? Stanza 3, the curtains ruffle. And then the man says, is there somebody there? Starting to become fantastic in terror. Stanza 4, how rude of me. I was dozing off. Is there something I can get you? Stanza 5. The speaker says, is that you, Lenore? And then the word Lenore gets whispered and echoed throughout the big house. Next stanza. He's convinced that there is something out his door. And now he has to explore this mystery. Next stanza. He opens up the shutter of the window to look outside, because I never thought about this before, but maybe he's afraid to open the door. So he looks through a window like you would look through a peephole. And in flies a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. And the raven perches upon a marble bust of Pallas. That's Pallas Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom. And then this bird was very fearful. Says the word nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly. In other words, the word nevermore. Though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast above the sculpted bust above the chamber door, with such name as nevermore. Poe is saying to this ebony, that would be black bird beguiling. Beguiling means puzzling. Who are you? What is thy lordly name, thy Christian name? And the bird says, nevermore. Well, that's a curious name. Who's got a name nevermore? Now, next stanza. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. The man is basically saying, you're going to come and fly into my room, keep me company for a few minutes, then you're going to leave me, like so many have done before. This is a terribly isolated man. Notice how I say isolated, not lonely. He's just, everybody in my life is here today, gone tomorrow. The fact is, he lost his deep love. Hey, Mr. Edwards, yeah. Oh, now it's time to get real. I forgot about this. Thank God I remembered. Alexis? Alexis?
Yeah.
I want you to call on me before I have a heart attack in front of a bunch of children, okay? You'll see. You ready?
Mr. Edwards.
Okay. It's my student persona, Arnold Horshack. Mr. Edwards. Yes, Arnold. Isn't it fair to compare the Raven to the Great Gatsby? What do you mean by that, Arnold? Well, they're both searching for lost love. Are they? Well, they're both lamenting great lost love. Are they? Gatsby lost Daisy and she... Did she? Poe lost Lenore. Did she? See? Do you see the connection? Poe lost his deep love. And for a moment, because of this bird rustling, he thinks that it could be her, come back as an apparition. And of course, Gatsby lost his love for 5 years. Now, final thought here. Did Poe in real life lose his deep love? Yes. As I noted in class lecture, both his mother and his bride died on him in the same year, knowing that his bride was very young, much younger than he. Okay, I saw something on the chat about due dates. Now, here's what I want. You can't recite the whole poem on Friday. We won't be able to memorize it in time. Only the first 2 stanzas. Let's go. I'll show you. For Friday, you recite this, the first 12 stanzas. Now I've been doing this for years. There isn't a student on planet Earth, including your older sisters. All the older sisters have been asked to memorize the Raven. I don't know if they did it. I don't know. Let's not go there. Here's how I'm going to do it on Friday. I'm just going to go up and down and just 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe I'm just going to look at who's on the chat and just go in order. And I'm going to say, can you recite the Raven without cheating? Now, if you cheat, that's between you and your conscience, because especially if you want, I cannot make you do this. I am not saying you have to do this. I do not have CPS prevents me from requiring this. But if you want to show your face and recite it to me to prove you're not fibbing, that's fine. But I will take you on your honor, because anybody could just read it from the notes. I want you to learn it so we can build upon poetry with that. Just like I want to read Gatsby to you so we can build upon literature with that. We have to have something we can all agree upon so I can start building. Here's how it goes. Round 1, round 2, round 3, you're out. Strike 3. If you can do it on Friday, full credit. Now you still keep the A. If you can't do it on Friday, I'll ask again on Monday. If you can do it on Monday, you do it for partial credit. There's the B for the grade. If you still can't do it on Monday, I will ask again on Tuesday, and then you do it for the C. And if you still can't do it, I'm not going to ask again. That's a blank, 0, zilch, nothing, nada. I don't want to be in your face. I want to be your teacher that cares about you deeply. But I'm going to tell you again because you seem to have forgotten. Father Mark Schuler, veteran of the United States Army Air Corps, asked me to memorize this poem on a lazy fall September day in 1983. I never heard of it. Well, maybe I heard of it, but I never read it. He assigned it on a Friday to recite at his podium on a Monday. I went home and I memorized it. I just read it over and over again and recited it over and over again until I had it memorized. And when I recited it, and then he started to teach us Poe and then the whole poem, I got so interested in Poe that everywhere I go now, I go with my Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, my books. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember. It was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. The embers from the fire in the fireplace. Eagerly I wished the morrow, a new day, tomorrow. Vainly, arrogantly, I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow. He's trying to find solace in his books. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. I'm going to say one last thing before we go to Gatsby. You will feel a sense of satisfaction. Okay, now back to Gatsby. I'm sick that I lost my notes. Notes are blank. What did I do? Let me go. Sometimes if you go here, no. All right, got to move on. I can't live in the past. Unlike Gatsby. Chapter 8. Natalie, what page are we on?
$157.
67 or 57?
57.
57. Chapter 8. Now, couple of points. We're going to finish The Great Gatsby Friday. I know it's hard to believe. You just set a world record for reading a major work of literature in 10 school days. We're going to read chapter 8 today is Wednesday, chapter 9 on Thursday, chapter 10 on Friday. Then we're done. Now, more than likely, I'll give you an extension on the essay because I don't want them to suck. And I'm starting to see the logic. Maybe you need to read the whole novel before you write that essay so you have all the pieces of the puzzle. So what I'm going to do is pause on the essay that was due Friday. What I will do is I will re-outline it on Friday and we'll make it due Monday. You could always start it. The essay is very clear. You are going to write a essay. You could actually call it a creative piece. Let's call it a creative writing. Let's call it creative because it's really not technical in research and you're not using literary terminology. Let's say you're writing a creative think piece. You're writing a chapter of Gatsby, if you will, of 250 to 500 words. You're going to write from the point of view of somebody who is oppressed or poor and how they view the Great Gatsby. I suggested you write from the point of view of a butler or a maid or maybe Gatsby's driver, maybe Gatsby's gardener. Maybe somebody of color. Now, we don't really know. I have to really, really deep dive. But they don't use the N word in Gatsby, but they use the word negro, which I've been skipping over because that's still very derogatory. But there's a lot of African American servants in Gatsby. And though it's hard to track, you must assume the following. The butlers at that time in that what they call that Gilded Age, the most of the butlers and maids would have been African American. or European immigrants. For example, Nick's maid is Finnish from Northern Europe. You got three choices. Unfortunately, there would not be any Latinx in Gatsby. That's a whole different wave of migration that had yet to occur in America. There are no Latin characters in Gatsby. There are only the children of former slaves, European immigrants that come here for opportunity, that struggle, and that are poor. And there really isn't much in between. So you're going to write from the position of either an immigrant who came, listen, you write from the point of view of an immigrant who came to America to improve her life, but here she is day in and day out doing Gatsby's laundry while he burns his money. That's something like that. But I want you to appreciate the fact, and I know you do, that littered throughout Gatsby, sprinkled throughout Gatsby, are the poor and oppressed. They are the servants in the background. One of the best examples is when Gatsby has Nick's lawn cut by his landscaper. And remember chapter 3, the tea party? It's pouring rain. And this poor landscaper comes over in a raincoat and says, I got to cut your lawn. Mr. Gatsby told me to. You don't cut your lawn in the rain. It's counterproductive. But he's doing what he's told.
Isn't the mechanic an oppressed character too?
Yes, and I mentioned that last time. I'm glad you reminded me. And then you've got Mr. Wilson. I love mechanics. My friend Al, who was a teacher of mine when I was in engineering school, he was a Vietnam veteran who was a mechanic on helicopters in Chu Lai, Vietnam, 1965. I have such a deep respect for people who I tried very hard. I was an engineering student for many years, and I took some mechanical engineering, motors, design, repair, maintenance. I learned the man who taught me mechanics, and nobody ever said, Mr. Edwards, you're a fine mechanic. I'm a bumbling mechanic at best. But two things about my mechanics is I can always start my lawnmower and I can always start my snowblower. There's just no exception to that rule. The man that I had for mechanical engineering as a teacher was Mr. Chambers. He was a Vietnam veteran who learned mechanics. Well, he went to Lane Tech. He went to Lane Tech in the very early 1960s, and he learned mechanics and electricity from Mr. Beckett Lane Tech when they used to have trades there. And then he got drafted into the Vietnam War, and he started to learn helicopter maintenance repair. These are the helicopters that these boys went out looking for the Viet Cong. There's some pretty choppy stuff, man. These are helicopters that are getting shot at. You know, you're repairing a hole in the gas tank because it just been hit by a sniper. And this was the man who taught me mechanics. So don't you dare think that I personally am demeaning mechanics. But to answer your question, in The Great Gatsby, the mechanic is subservient. It's a inferior position in society. Mr. Wilson, the mechanic that you speak of, never can catch a break. Never has enough money to save, let alone take his wife on an expensive trip out west to rekindle their marriage. He's always chasing the almighty dollar. He's a pawn in what we would call this complicated game of capitalism. And I know one of you put in the message the other day, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You remember, I didn't write this essay question, you did. You did. You put it in your notes. And I'm seizing the opportunity. I think it's a great exercise in point of view. It's an incredible exercise in point of view. One thing that I learned from this reading of Gatsby with you that I never really focused on before was just how many poor people are all around these rich people and how they're only casually referenced and how it's just assumed that they will obediently serve their employer.
Wait, isn't Nick kind of poor too? But he's with the rich people, so like.
Okay. Outstanding question. Nick's family, which we know comes from Chicago, his family owned a chain of hardware stores, somewhere between True Value and Ace, the local hardware store. That's a fairly prosperous adventure. So he's well-to-do. I mean, whoa. His family did not own a single hardware store. His family owned a chain of hardware stores. So that would be like, I don't own one McDonald's franchise. I own 10. That's a lot of, now you're talking millions. His parents are wealthy enough to send him to New Haven, which is New Haven, Connecticut, which is Yale University, which is Ivy League. So he goes to one of the most expensive colleges in the world. When he graduates and goes home, he doesn't want to go into the family business. He wants to make his own mark. So he goes east and he learns the bond business, stocks and bonds. He's trying to make his own. But you are right. All throughout Gatsby, knowing that it's the length of a summer, Gatsby takes place over the course of 3 months, about 90 days. Right now, we're in mid-August in Gatsby. Right now, Nick is a first. Nick had just started that summer a new job in New York with a stocks and bonds firm. He's making salary. And of course, he pays $80 a month for his bungalow. In no way is Nick himself wealthy. Though, like Mr. Edwards, he comes from money. See, I'm Nick. In terms of economics, I'm Nick. I have a comfortable lifestyle. I have a middle of the road home. Well, this is my house. You're looking at it. But my parents were very well off their whole life. We wanted for nothing. And I'm not trying to make you feel bad about that. I'm actually trying to show you and acknowledge the concept of growing up white in America in the last 100 years. You forget, you are not allowed to forget that the opening sentence of The Great Gatsby defines 100 million American white people. In my younger, in more vulnerable years, my father gave me a piece of advice that I've been rolling around in my head ever since. He said, son, remember, when you go out into the world, not everyone has had the same advantage as you. There's a fundamental shift in the American story that I was only made aware of in the last few years. I'm 52 years old. I would never be able to think like this when I was your age. I had to learn this by growing up. When we were young, we were told if you work hard, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, you could make it. All you needed to do was a little elbow grease, a little initiative. You have access and opportunity for the American dream. If you can dream it, you can do it. We were told that we could. But it wasn't but I wasn't living in a multiracial world. I went to a school the size of Lane Tech, and it was 3,400 white boys. First of all, I'm not going to feel guilty about that. How could I know? It was when I started to become older and travel, and then especially when I became a teacher working at Austin and Orr, that I said, wait, whoa, these children I teach, they don't have the same opportunity I did at their age. Oh my God. There's a lot of unemployment in the school I'm teaching. There's a lot of desperation. There's a lot of fear. Oh my God. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of police confusion. Oh my God. Did I just witness some brutality on the street? Here's the problem. You listen to me very carefully. I'm recording this. As a white person, I'm the only one that can say this, but there are other white people here. I'm not the only white person on this conversation. I have never, so you have to understand, I'm working out a thought process. I believe now, based on politics and what's happening in this country, I see two types of white people, people that I know. People representing government and friends. White people that are finally admitting like me that they had a much more opportunity and much more advantage than the new wave of immigrants that are working for very little money and African Americans that are just wanting not to be murdered. But then there's also a whole group of white people, in fact, your president, that are saying, you know, we earned this. That's the white supremacy. That's what scares me. Listen, I do not want. Listen, there's just no denying it. As a debate coach, I do not want one point of view. As a reader of Gatsby, I want to reserve judgment. But remarks made by your president yesterday are starting to force even my hand. Yesterday, in an interview that has been broadcast numerous times all over networks, the president is defending the Confederate battle flag as freedom of speech. And then the president said more white people are murdered than black people on the streets. Well, there's 100 million more white people in America than black, so of course there's going to be higher crimes. But disproportionately, black people in every instance have higher murder rates from police brutality. My friend Kevin, who's white, who was my next door neighbor, whose father served the United States Army for 50 years, including Korea and Vietnam. My friend Kevin challenged another friend of ours who's white too, who was saying some racist nonsense about white lives matter, that ridiculous, completely illogical rhetoric, trying to take away the thunder of the Black Lives Matter movement. My friend Kevin said to my friend Jim, and I love them both dearly, but these are the conversations that have to take place. My friend Kevin said to my friend Jim, these are childhood friends. He said, Jim, you're white. Have you ever once been pulled over by the police? Lots of times, traffic tickets and stuff. You ever been afraid? Of course not. Then you missed the point. We are talking about a whole race of people that when they get pulled over, they are afraid. And black young people on this conversation, you know, I know, because you know the talk. There's two talks in the world. There's the father to son, mother to daughter talk about the birds and the bees. And then there's the African American father to son talk. When you get pulled over by police, this is what you do. You keep your hands visible. Don't go reaching for that cell phone. No white person gets that talk. I've been pulled over by the police more times than you've been alive. I mean, why? Of course, in 52 years. I've been pulled over by the police in the parking lot of PMA. I have never been harassed by the police. I wonder why that is. Is that because of the color of my skin? Probably. See, I'm trying to do something that's almost impossible to do. You listen to me carefully and you will be scholars. I promise you. You think have I been wrong once yet? Everything I said, I'm going to West Egg Village tomorrow. I told you that. Prove me wrong. We're going to have class tomorrow at the edge of Gatsby's dock. Watch me. I promise you that if you get what I'm saying for the 50th time, you will be scholars worthy of 10,000 pages of literature. I will take you through an exploration of literature where people will be in a gaze at your knowledge. The reason, listen to me, please. You're such politeful young people. I'm so trying to help you not be messed up in the most confusing times ever. I have 250, I have 1,000 novels I could have taught you. Why did I choose Gatsby out of 1,000 novels? Because of Nick. Because he's reserving judgment. He is looking at the most disgusting people ever made, and he's saying, I don't have the right to judge even them. Here's my point. At some point, he does get judgmental, perhaps, but he's trying very hard not to condemn other human beings for their thoughts and beliefs, who obviously deserve to be condemned, which is why I am saying something so complicated, I don't even know if I understand it. As much as I hate you know who, I still am trying to not put that poison in your head. I am still saying that we are better off peaceful. We are better off using legislative processes. These people who said voting doesn't matter are full of it. They said something like 58 million voters that are eligible to vote don't vote. I'm saying, listen, here's what I'm saying. I'm saying that you can't really change the mind of a born-bred racist, but what you can do is not be racist yourself and grow up and teach your children to be tolerant and start changing the world for the better, so your children grow up in a world of hope, not a world of disease, mental, physical. It's impossible to do. Don't you think? Don't you think I just want to go climb a mountain and scream at the top of my lungs about the craziness going on all around us? But what would that solve? I am taking my responsibility very seriously. I am trying to educate you so you are not intolerant, ignorant, violent, supercilious. You can't win here. You know why? Because for me, the greatest challenge and greatest accomplishment of being a teacher is opening up the mind of the students you teach. Socrates, one of the first teachers of the Western world, he said very famously, I cannot change people's minds. I can only make people think for themselves. Do you know something? Something that very few people know. Do you know, Alexis? I need you to check in if we're going to get heavy and philosophical. Hello, Rich. Do you guys know who Socrates is? Does anybody know Socrates? Does that look familiar to anybody? Socrates was a teacher in Greece in 500 BC, so just over 2,500 years ago. And he was arrested by the Greek authorities, and he was charged with heresy or treason because he taught his students to think for themselves. And they didn't want that. They just wanted him to give the religious customs, the mathematics. They didn't want students or pupils to think for themselves because that would lead to, that would alter society. They would no longer be conformed and they would no longer be obedient. They would start to be rebellious and want things. Socrates publicly committed suicide on behalf of his students. Now, I'm not going to do that. And I promise you, why would I be wrong? I mean, you can't, it's the one thing that I will never, ever get out of my craw is that one of the first teachers of the Western world chose to make an example for his students, chose death as his course because he was accused of teaching his students to think for themselves. That was the charge against him in the courts. Right, Marcello, he was a Greek philosopher. Here's the last thought. So many people in your lives want you to be obedient. And in many ways, we all should be obedient. I don't personally talk back to the police. I don't get flippant with Mr. Whip. I'm very courteous when I'm in the store and a stranger bumps into me. I say, excuse me. I'm not looking for trouble. But that's just being a good citizen. You should be good citizens of the city of Chicago. But what scares the man is when young people like yourselves think for themselves. I'll give you a good example. I cannot tell you how many former students I've taught at PMA that were out on the streets during those last protests for Black Lives Matter. I can't tell you how many students checked in, including the older sister of one of the. Well, he's not. I can't tell you how many students contacted me in saying, Mr. Edwards, do you support our protest? Of course I do. You are exercising your right to peacefully protest the government. Which is why your generation has incredible potential and power, because you are part of a conversation. And that is the status of immigrants and the status of African Americans in the context of systemic brutality and police harassment. And that conversation has been ongoing in this country for a long time, and it's coming to a head. We're either going to change it or it's going to continue to get violent. Alexis, should I just hang up now and go throw myself into the lake for a swim? All right, let's review. I don't know how I'm in this mood. I don't know how I got in this mood. Have I upset anybody? Anaya, did I upset you? All right, you don't have to answer. Let's go back to Gatsby. Okay, Mr. Edwards, I get it. The reason you chose Gatsby was because there's a narrator named Nick who's very tolerant. Yes. Then why did you just say that? I did. I only do what I do because I care about you. Chapter 8. I couldn't sleep all night. A foghorn was groaning incessantly on the sound, and I tossed half sick between grotesque reality and savage, frightening dreams. Toward dawn, I heard a taxi go up to Gatsby's Drive, and immediately I jumped out of bed and began to dress. I felt that I had something to tell him, something to warn him about, and morning would be too late. Crossing his lawn, I saw that his front door was still open, and he was leaning against the table in the hall, heavy with dejection or sleep. I'm just going to take a sip of coffee. Nothing happened, he said wanly. I waited, and about 4 o'clock, she came to the window and stood there for a minute, then turned out the light. His house had never seemed so enormous to me as it did that night when we hunted through the great rooms for cigarettes. We pushed aside curtains that were like pavilions and felt over innumerable feet of dark wall for electric light switches. Once I tumbled with a sort of splash upon the keys of a ghostly piano. There was an inexplicable amount of dust everywhere, and the rooms were musty as though they hadn't been aired for many days. I found the humidor on an unfamiliar table with 2 stale, dry cigarettes inside. Throwing open the French windows of the drawing room, we sat smoking out into the darkness. You ought to go away, I said. It's been pretty certain that they'll trace your car. Go away now, old sport? Go to Atlantic City for a week or up to Montreal. He wouldn't consider it. He couldn't possibly leave Daisy until he knew what she was going to do. He was clutching at some last hope, and I couldn't bear to shake him free. It was this night that he told me the strange story of his youth with Dan Cody. Told it to me because Jay Gatsby had broken up like glass against Tom's hard malice, and the long secret extravaganza was played out. I think that he would have acknowledged anything now without reserve, but he wanted to talk about Daisy. She was the first nice girl he had ever known. In various unrevealed capacities, he had come in contact with such people, but always with indiscernible barbed wire between. He found her excitingly desirable. He went to her house, at first with officers from Camp Taylor, then alone. It amazed him. He had never been in such a beautiful house before. But what gave it an air of breathless intensity was that Daisy lived there. It was as casual a thing to her as his tent out at camp was to him. There was a right mystery There was a ripe mystery about it, a hint of bedrooms upstairs more beautiful and cool than other bedrooms, of gay and radiant activities taking place through its corridors, and of romances that were not musty and laid away already in lavender, but fresh and breathing and redolent of this year's shining motor cars, and of dances whose flowers were scarcely withered. It excited him, too, that many men had already loved Daisy. It increased her value in his eyes. He felt their presence all about the house, pervading the air with shades and echoes of still vibrant emotions. But he knew that it was in Daisy's house by a colossal accident. However glorious might be his future as Jay Gatsby, he was at present a penniless young man without a past, and at any moment the invisible cloak of his uniform might slip from his shoulders. So he made the most of his time. He took what he could get ravenously and unscrupulously. Eventually, he took Daisy one still October night, took her because he had no real right to touch her hand. He might have despised himself, for he had taken her under false pretenses. I don't mean... I'm going to come back to you in a sec. I thought I heard somebody chime in. My bad. He might have despised himself, for he had certainly taken her under false pretenses. I don't mean that he had traded on his phantom millions, but he had deliberately given Daisy a sense of security. He let her believe that he was a person from much the same stratum as herself, that he was fully able to take care of her. As a matter of fact, he had no such facilities. He had no comfortable family standing behind him, and he was liable at the whim of an impersonal government to be blown out anywhere about the world. This is a flashback scene to when they were young. And now Gatsby is essentially confessing to Nick, did I lie to Daisy? I pretend I was richer than I was. Pretend that I was stable and would always be here. Because remember what they just said, he's likely to be taken anywhere and blown up around the world. Because he's going to be sent off to war. Gatsby's so full of self-doubt. So keen to criticize himself, full of anxiety. That's tragic right there. But he didn't despise himself, and it didn't turn out as he imagined. He had intended probably to take what he could and go. But now he found that he had committed himself to the following of a grail. He knew that Daisy was extraordinary, but he didn't realize just how extraordinary a nice girl could be. She vanished into her rich house, into her rich, full life, leaving Gatsby nothing. He felt married to her. That was all. F. Scott Fitzgerald based The Great Gatsby on the legend of King Arthur and the search for the Holy Grail. Something that is very sacred, something that is hidden and lost. I'm going to briefly tell you the story of the Grail. It's very incredible. I want you to really pay attention. When Jesus was crucified, there was a man named Joseph of Arimathea who did something profound. He grabbed the chalice or cup that Jesus is used at the Last Supper, and while Jesus was bleeding on the cross, this man called Joseph let some drops of Jesus's blood into the cup. Now, because it's Jesus and he's immortal, the blood will never dry. It will always be wet, moist, living, immortal blood, the blood of Christ. Joseph knew he had something powerful because anybody who drinks that blood becomes immortal like God. He didn't want it to fall into the wrong hands. So history or legend records that Joseph from the town of Arimathea in Jerusalem sneaks under cloak of night across many continents until he goes to the farthest most point of the world at that time, the island of England. Because then you have the Atlantic Ocean. He traveled to the south of England to a village called Glastonbury. And there he buried the cup with Jesus's blood in an unknown location. And then mythology records that a mythical monster called the Fisher King was sent down to guard the cup so it wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. Because if you drink this cup, you become immortal. You can't die. You be like Superman. You could be good or you could be bad. Superman was both because of the series, that how he and legend about 700 AD, legend got around England that there was a grail. The grail is the French word for cup. Legend got around through whispers and murmurs, like Gatsby's parties, that there was a great treasure buried somewhere in England. And if you uncovered this treasure and drank from it, you would become invincible, immortal. You would be a god. So the knights set out looking for it. And the knight that is most associated with this story is King Arthur. King Arthur searched all over England for the cup. And the cup is looking for its rightful owner. If you find the cup and you are not the rightful owner, you will be perished. The Fisher King will just... But if you are the rightful owner, the cup will be given to you freely. Now, King Arthur, quote unquote, in this story is the rightful owner. But how do I know I'm the rightful owner? The only way to know you're the rightful owner is you have to ask the Fisher King a question. If you ask the wrong question, then you perish. If you ask the right question, then you are the rightful owner to the cup, and you get the cup. Mr. Edwards, what is the question? I'm not going to tell you today. I know what the question is. I searched long. I actually discovered the question in England. I searched very, very long and hard. Now, I know we'll get back to this, but the Grail is a metaphor for a knight searching for something that has been lost, something that has been buried, something that is of great treasure, something that if you find it, you become whole and happy and immortal. That is Gatsby. Gatsby is Arthur. Gatsby is searching for his grail. Daisy's the grail. Gatsby is searching for something that was lost and buried, his true love. Gatsby is the king on a quest in search of the lady of his dreams. I'm going to tell you this. Nobody else would ever say this to you. Mr. Edwards, yes. Should I go about searching for the lady of my dreams? Or should I go about searching for the man of my dreams or whatever? I don't care. Yes. How do I know when I found my true love? I'm only 15. Daisy was 18 when she met Gatsby. I'm going to tell you once and for all. When your heart goes like this, when you get down, you'll know. You'll know. He knew that Daisy was extraordinary, but he didn't realize just how extraordinary a nice girl could be. When they met again 2 days later, it was Gatsby who was breathless, who was somehow betrayed. Her porch was bright with the bought luxury of a starshine. The wicker of the settee squeaked fashionably as she turned toward him, and he kissed her curious and lovely mouth. She had caught a cold, and it made her voice huskier and more charming than ever, and Gatsby was overwhelmingly aware of the youth and mystery that wealth imprisons and preserves, of the freshness of many clothes, and of Daisy gleaming like silver, safe and proud above the hot struggles of the poor. I can't describe to you how surprised I was to find out I loved her, old sport. I even hoped for a while that she'd throw me over, but she didn't, because she was in love with me too. She thought I knew a lot because I knew different things from her. Well, I way off my ambitions, getting deeper in love every minute. And all of a sudden I didn't care. That was the use of doing great things if I could have a better time telling her what I was going to do. On the last afternoon before he went abroad, he sat with Daisy in his arms for a long, silent time. It was a cold fall day with fire in the room, and her cheeks flushed. Now and then she moved, and he changed his arm a little, and once he kissed her dark, shining hair. The afternoon had made them tranquil for a while, as if to give them a deep memory for the long parting the next day promised. They had never been closer in their month of love, nor communicated more profoundly one with another than when she brushed silent lips against his coat shoulder, or when he touched the end of her fingers gently as though she were asleep. He did extraordinarily well in the war. He was a captain before he went to the front. In the following the Argonne battles, he got his majority in the command of the divisional machine guns. After the armistice, he tried frantically to get home, but some complication or misunderstanding sent him to Oxford instead. He was worried now. There was a quality of nervous despair in Daisy's letters. She didn't see why he couldn't come. She was feeling the pressure of the world outside, and she wanted to see him and feel his presence beside her and be reassured that she was doing the right thing after all. For Daisy was young, and her artificial world was redolent of orchids and pleasant, cheerful snobbery and orchestras which set the rhythm of the year, summing up the sadness and the suggestiveness of life in new tunes. All night the saxophones wailed the hopeless comment of the Beale Street Blues. With 100 pairs of golden and silver slippers shuffling the shining dust at the gray tea hour, there were always rooms that throbbed incessantly with the low, sweet fever, while fresh faces drifted here and there like rose petals blown by the sand horns around the floor. Through this twilight universe, Daisy began to move again with the season. Suddenly she was again keeping half a dozen dates a day with half a dozen men, and drowsing asleep at dawn with the beads and chiffon of an evening dress tangled among the dry orchids on the floor beside her bed. And all the time, something within her was crying for a decision. She wanted her life shaped now, immediately. And the decision must be made by some force of love, of money, of unquestionable practicality. That was close at hand. So, Mr. Edwards, yeah. Wait a minute. And it was referenced earlier in yesterday's reading, but there's so much to take in. Is F. Scott Fitzgerald saying that Daisy, who absolutely, truly loved Gatsby, but he was going off to serve his country? Is F. Scott Fitzgerald suggesting that the only reason she married Tom, the man that she did not love, was because she was impatient and she wanted just a practical life and she wanted security? Instead of waiting for her man to return, her true love, she just wanted things to be nice and orderly? I think so.
Wait, on the day of her marriage with Tom, didn't she like rip the letter, like, or she dropped it in the water and like fell apart or something?
Outstanding scholarship. Gatsby wrote her a farewell love letter, which, of course, every single Army soldier does when they go off to war. Of course. And Gatsby's letter is one of a million. I love you. I really don't know when I'll be back. You'll be in my dreams, and I will come home safely. Love, Jay. She reads that letter. You're 100. Oh my God, you've never been more right in your life, kid. She reads that letter the night before her wedding. Remember, she gets so drunk because she has to marry Tom and her true love is gone. She, for the first time in her life, she gets wasted. They put her in a bathtub to sober her up. She has the letter in the bathtub. She crumples it up until it deteriorates like a sponge or like soap. And then that's it. Goodbye, my sweet love. Now I'm going to go the next morning, marry this rich millionaire. Who's going to give me, remember, a $350,000 diamond necklace? Look, this is a big problem for us. Because this might make Daisy a little bit compromising. She might have settled for, well, she did. She settled for less. Look. I'm not afraid to read. You tell me. You tell me. Daisy wanted her life shaped now. Immediately. And the decision must be made by some force of love, of money, of unquestionable practicality. That was as close at hand. That force took shape in the middle of the spring with the arrival of Tom Buchanan. There was a wholesome bulkiness about his person and his position, and Daisy was flattered. Doubtless there was a certain struggle and a certain relief. The letter reached Gatsby while he was still at Oxford. It was dawn now on Long Island, back to real time, and we went about opening the rest of the windows downstairs, filling the house with gray-turning, gold-turning light. The shadow of a tree fell abruptly across the dew, and ghostly birds began to sing among the blue leaves. There was a slow, pleasant movement in the air, scarcely a wind, promising a cool, lovely day. I don't think she ever loved him. That's Gatsby saying Daisy never loved Buchanan. From a window and looked at me challenging. You must remember, old sport, she was very excited this afternoon. He told her those things in a way that frightened her, that made it look as if some kind of cheap sharper, and the result was she hardly knew what she was saying. He sat down gloomily. Of course, she might have loved him just for a minute when they were first married, and loved me even more then. Don't you see? Suddenly he came out with a curious remark. In any case, he said, it was just personal. What could you make of that except to suspect some intensity in his conception of the affair that couldn't be measured? He came back from France when Tom and Daisy were, the war in France, and Daisy were still on their wedding trip, and made a miserable but irresistible journey to Louisville on the last of his army pay. He stayed there a week, walking the streets where their footsteps had clicked together through the November night, and revisiting the out-of-the-way places to which they had driven in her white car. Just as Daisy's house had always seemed to him more mysterious and gay than other houses, so his idea of the city itself, even though she was gone from it, was pervaded with a melancholy beauty. He left feeling that if he had, this line is my favorite quote in The Great Gatsby, other than the opening title about advantage. This line is on my classroom wall. You'll see someday. He left feeling that if he had searched harder, he might have found her. That is poignant. Mr. Edwards, what does poignant mean? That's what poignant means. If he had only searched harder, he could have found her. That sums up everything for me. If he'd only worked harder, if he only, because he did search for her after he got back from years of battle. He went back to the point where they met. He strolled through the neighborhoods, but she was long gone. She'd been married to Tom. You know, they're out west. If he only searched harder, he could have found her. You watch this magic trick. I'm not playing. Mr. Edwards, are you saying that there's a grail, a cup, buried somewhere in England, that if I find it and drink from it, I will be immortal? Is that true? Or is that just a mythology and a story like Harry Potter? And if it's true, Mr. Edwards, if I search hard enough, well, could I find it? Yes. It's true. I've searched for it. I've searched very hard for it. I'm going to tell you something that is so true, you can Google it when we hang up. There are two cities in southern England that are connected with the burial of the cup. I know where it is, but I'm not the rightful owner. Oh, I know where it is. The cup is in a part of England called Glastonbury and Salisbury. And I am not making this up. People that go to these cities who never even heard of the Grail, they feel great euphoria. They feel energized. They feel like all their problems have gone away because they're standing on sacred soil. In fact, you pay attention. It is theorized, and I believe the reason that when people go to that part of the world that they feel so incredible with joy is because they're standing on the heart of Mother Earth. That's the heart beating. Mother Earth's heart, knowing that Mother Earth is a living organism with feelings and thoughts, her heart is located under Salisbury, England. Now listen to me carefully. Mr. Edwards, I thought the earth was a dormant rock. Are you kidding me? Do you not see the life that comes out of Mother Earth? The grasses alone should tell you she's alive, let alone the flowers and trees. What, are you suggesting to me that flowers and trees can grow out of nothing? They can only grow out of life. Mother Earth is alive. She's conscious. She's constantly saying, don't step on me. Please don't put a parking lot on me. Watch this magic trick. Could I know we were going to talk about this today? I guarantee I will spin the wheel. Let's see what we get. I might have to be I'm going to be a little bit more specific in my search. Wait, what? Stop. What is this? I don't want this.
It's just Wikipedia asking for donations.
Yeah, I'm gonna try one more search. I've seen studies, but again, I'm Googling. I see the problem with oh, I'm just not doing a good search. Here. I can't find it now. I'll explain to you the research that I have. Okay. And Stonehenge is there too. All right. Well, unfortunately, a Google search is just not in depth enough for the type of research I'm talking about. In the last decades, researchers noticed a strange phenomenon in Salisbury, England, which is got a lot of sacred places, including Stonehenge. I've been there many times. A lot of people who go through this part of the southern coast, southern England, they record later how they felt euphoria or joy just wash over them, and how they felt momentarily, at least, that they didn't even have a care in the world. They felt youthful and invigorated. And so they started to build research as if there's some sort of kinetic energy or is there something in the ionics, the ionic, the ions, that there's negative and positive ions in there's you know one thing, there's negative and positive in everything. And negative is negative and positive is positive. And you throughout your whole day, you go from thinking positive and then you catch yourself thinking negative. That's because you're constantly being pulled by these influences. There's two major influences in the world. They're invisible influences, but they absolutely exist. And that is the alpha and beta influences. You've all heard the phrase alpha male, or like dogs are alpha dogs, that dominant, aggressive. Well, beta is more tolerant and laid back. The problem is these particles, these invisible energies, they're constantly coming through you. They're constantly invading you, and they're pulling you in the direction they want to go, which is why you have to fight these impulses. You know what I'm talking about. You're not that young and unschooled. You know that in any given day, you're going to be like, positive, I can do this. Or then 5 minutes later, negative, I'm such a loser. Everybody hates me. These influences are just, that's why you have to fight them consciously. It's the same thing with the moon. The gravitational pull of the moon pulls you and makes you anxious, and you can't stop tapping your foot. See, something that a lot of people don't realize, which should be self-evident, is everybody knows one thing. When there's a full moon, especially, Everybody knows the pull of the moon causes the oceans to crash on the beaches and rocks. Do you know this, Alexis? Fair enough. You've heard this? Anybody?
A little bit.
The moon exerts an influence on you because of its gravity. The moon pulls on Earth. Now, please pay attention. Just as the moon pulls on the oceans and forces violent waves, you have to remember 77% of your body is water. Your water is stored in a part of your body called the lymphoid system, the lymphic system. The water in your body is stored in the lymphic system. It's a major system. On any of this, I just want a basic definition of the lymphatic system. Gosh darn it. Now, today's not the day to be scrolling. We'll get back to all that. The day coach, he was penniless now, was hot. He went out to the open vestibule and sat down on a folding chair. And the station slid away, and the backs of unfamiliar buildings moved by. Then out into the spring fields, where a yellow trolley raced them for a minute with people in it who might once have seen the pale magic of her face along the casual street. The track curved, and now it was going away from the sun, which as it sank lower seemed to spread itself in benediction over the vanishing city where she had drawn her breath. He stretched out his hand desperately as if to snatch only a wisp of air to save a fragment of the spot that she had made lovely for him. But it was all going by too fast now, for it has blurred his eyes, and he knew that he had lost that part of it, the freshest and best, forever. It was 9 o'clock when he finished breakfast and went out on the porch. The night had made a sharp difference in the weather, and there was an autumn flavor in the air. The gardener, the last one of Gatsby's former servants, came to the foot of the steps. I'm going to drain the pool today, Mr. Gatsby. Leaves start to fall pretty soon, and then there's always trouble with pipes. Summer's over in Gatsby. Now they're entering fall. Don't do it today, Gatsby answered. He turned to me apologetically. You know, old sport, I never used that pool all summer. I looked at my watch and stood up. 12 minutes to my train. I didn't want to go to the city. It wasn't worth a decent stroke of work, but I was more than that. I didn't want to leave Gatsby. I missed that train and then another before I could get myself away. I'll call you up, I said finally. Do, old sport. I'll call you about noon. We walked slowly down the steps. I suppose Daisy will call too. He looked at me anxiously as if he hoped I'd corroborate this. I suppose so. Well, goodbye. We shook hands and I started away just before I reached the hedge. I remembered something and turned around. There's a rotten crowd, I shouted across the lawn. You're worth the whole damn bunch put together. I've always been glad I said that. It was the only compliment I ever gave him. What was the compliment? Oh, Nick says they're a rotten crowd. You're worth the whole damn bunch together. So see, even Nick, that's my point. I got to close some of these. I got one too many windows open. I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to make a point. Nick, that's everything I said in my extended tough love speech to you that I spent the better part of the morning trying to convince you to be tolerant. That you can't change other people's minds. All you can do is make them think. We hope. Even Nick has a limit. That's my point. Mr. Edwards, now I get it. You were saying you don't want to just come out and say, I hate this guy. I want to go on top of the mountain and shout, this sucks. That's counterproductive. That's a waste of energy. That's the whole point of today's meeting is the energies that are going through you, the mixed messages, the alpha, the beta, the moon waves. Things are pulling on you. Even Nick got to a point where he could no longer stand silent. He can no longer not judge. And he got to finally, because Gatsby's so beating himself up. Gatsby is so self-incriminating. Gatsby is my whole life. And look, I've got all this money, but I still feel completely like a failure. Nick doesn't even want to go to work that morning. He misses 3 trains. He says, Jay, Gatsby, you're the only one I like. You're the only one worth a you know what. They're rotten. Stop beating yourself up. Why did I close out the novel? My bad. See? Do you not see the kinetic energies being played here? Mr. Edwards, yes, I'm only a sophomore. I forgot. Oops. Oops. So we'll go back to page 160 something. So we're like, you know what page we were on?
164.
Damn, are you good? Do I have the best page number manager captain in the history of literature? I had no idea where we were. All right, 164, let's go. Draining the pool. They're a rotten crowd. And he screams it to him. He's yelling it across the lawn. You're worth the whole damn bunch put together. I've always been glad I said that. It was the only compliment I ever gave him, because I disapproved of him from beginning to end. First he nodded politely, and then his face broke into that radiant and understanding smile, as if we'd been in ecstatic cahoots on that fact all the time. His gorgeous pink rag of a suit made a bright spot of color against the white steps, and I thought of the night when I first came to his ancestral home 3 months before. The lawn and drive had been crowded with the faces of those who guessed at his corruption, and he had stood on those steps concealing his incorruptible dream as he waved them goodbye. You see, this is Mr. Edwards, yes. He had an incorruptible dream. I thanked him for his hospitality. We were always thanking him for that, I and the others. Goodbye, I called. I enjoyed breakfast, Gatsby. Up in the city, I tried a while to listen to the quotations of an interminable amount of stock. Then I fell asleep in my swivel chair. Just before noon, the phone woke me, and I started up with sweat breaking out on my forehead. It was Jordan Baker. She often called me up at this hour because the uncertainty of her own movements between hotels and clubs and private houses made her hard to find in any other way. Usually her voice came over the wires as something fresh and cool, as if a Devo from a green golf links had come sailing in at the office window, but this morning it seemed harsh and dry. I've left Daisy's house, she said. I'm at Hempstead, and I'm going down to Southampton this afternoon. Probably it had been tactful to leave Daisy's house, but the act annoyed me, and her next remark made me rigid. You weren't so nice to me last night. How could that have mattered? Silence for a moment. However, I want to see you. I want to see you, too. Jordan and Nick never quite finalized their romance. You got to take a sip of coffee. Suppose I don't go to Southampton and come into town this afternoon. No, I don't think this afternoon. Very well. It's impossible this afternoon. We talked like that for a while, and then abruptly we weren't talking any longer. I don't know which of us hung up with a sharp click, but I know I didn't care. I couldn't have talked to her across a tea table that day if I never talked to her again in this world. Like, he's just done. He's just so frustrated with these rotten people. I called Gatsby's house a few minutes later, but the line was busy. I tried 4 times. Finally, an exasperated central told me the wire was being kept open for long distance from Detroit. Taking out my timetable, I drew a small circle around the 3:50 train. Then I leaned back in my chair and tried to think. It was just noon. When I passed the ash heaps on the train that morning, I had crossed deliberately to the other side of the car. I suppose there'd be a curious crowd around there all day with little boys searching for dark spots in the dust and some garrulous men telling over and over what had happened until it became less and less real, even to him, and he could tell it no longer, and Myrtle Wilson's tragic achievement was forgotten. Now I want to go back a little and tell you what happened at the garage after we left there the night before. They had difficulty in locating the sister, Catherine. She must have broken her rule against drinking that night, for when she arrived, she was stupid with liquor and unable to understand that the ambulance had already gone to Flushing. When they convinced her of this, she immediately fainted, as if that was the intolerable part of the affair. Someone kind or curious took her in his car and drove her into the wake of her sister's body. Until long after midnight, a changing crowd lapped up against the front of the garage while George Wilson rocked himself back and forth on the couch inside. For a while, the door of the office was open, and everyone who came into the garage glanced irresistibly through it. Finally, someone said it was a shame and closed the door. Mike Hollis and several other men were still with him. First 4 or 5 men, later 2 or 3. Still later, McCollis had to ask the last stranger to wait there 15 minutes longer while he went back to his own place and made a pot of coffee. After that, he stayed there alone with Wilson until dawn. About 3 o'clock, the quality of Wilson's incoherent muttering changed. He grew quieter and began to talk about the yellow car. He announced that he had a way of finding out whom the yellow car belonged to, and then he excuse me, and then he blurted out that a couple of months ago his wife had come from the city with her face bruised and her nose swollen. Remember, that's when Tom punched her? But when he heard himself say this, he flinched and began to cry. "Oh, my God!" Again in his groaning voice, Mike Hollis made a clumsy attempt to distract him. "How long have you been married, George?" "Oh, it's George Wilson. I don't know why I keep calling him Tom Wilson." "Come on there, try and sit still a minute and answer my question. How long have you been married?" 12 years. "Ever had any children?" "Come on, George, sit still." "I asked you a question. Did you ever have any children?" The hard brown beetles kept thudding against the dull light, and whenever McCollis heard a car go tearing along the road outside, it sounded to him like the car that hadn't stopped a few hours before. He didn't like to go into the garage because the workbench was stained where the body had been lying, so he moved uncomfortably around the office. He knew every object in it before morning, and from time to time sat down beside Wilson, trying to keep him more quiet. "Have you got a church you go to sometimes, George? Maybe even if you haven't been there for a long time. Maybe I could call up the church and get a priest to come over and he could talk to you, see?" "Don't belong to any." "You ought to have a church, George, for times like this. You must have gone to church once. Didn't you get married in a church? Listen, George, listen to me. Didn't you get married in a church?" "That was a long time ago." The effort of answering broke the rhythm of his rocking. For a moment he was silent. Then the same half-knowing, half-bewildered look came back into his faded eyes. "Look in the drawer there," he said, pointing at the desk. "Which drawer?" "That drawer, that one." Michaelis opened the drawer near his head. There was nothing in it but a small, expensive dog leash made of leather and braided silver. It was apparently new. This, he inquired, holding it up. Wilson stared and nodded. I found it yesterday afternoon. She tried to tell me about it, but I knew it wasn't something funny. You mean your wife bought it? She had it wrapped in tissue paper on her bureau. McCollis didn't see anything odd in that and gave Wilson a dozen reasons why his wife might have bought the dog leash. That's the dog that Tom bought her. But conceivably, Wilson had heard some of these same explanations before from Myrtle because he began saying, "Oh my God," again in a whisper. His comforter left several explanations in the air. Then he killed her, said Wilson. His mouth dropped open suddenly. Who did? I have a way of finding out. You're morbid, George said, his friend. This has been a strain to you, and you know what you're saying. You don't know what you're saying. You'd be better off to sit quiet till morning. He murdered her. It was an accident, George. Wilson shook his head. His eyes narrowed and his mouth widened slightly with the ghost of a superior hum. I know, he said definitely. I'm one of those trusting fellows, and I don't think any harm to nobody. But when I get to know a thing, I know it. It was the man in that car. She ran out to speak to him, and he wouldn't stop. Mike Hollis had seen this too, but it hadn't occurred to him that there was any special significance in it. He believed that Mrs. Wilson had been running away from her husband, rather than trying to stop any particular car. How could she have been like that? She's a deep one, said Wilson, as if that answered the question. Ah. He began to rock again, and Mike Hollis stood twisting the leash in my hand. Maybe you got some friend that I could telephone for, George. This was a forlorn hope. He was almost sure that Wilson had no friend. There was not enough of him for his wife. He was glad a little later when he noticed a change in the room, a blue quickening by the window, and realized that dawn wasn't far off. About 5 o'clock, it was blue enough outside to snap off the light. Wilson's glazed eyes turned out to the ash heaps, where small gray clouds took on fantastic shape and scurried here and there in the faint dawn wind. I spoke to her, he muttered after a long silence. I told her she might fool me, but she couldn't fool God. I took her to the window. With an effort, he got up and walked to the rear window and leaned with his face pressed against it. And I said, God knows what you've been doing, everything you've been doing. You may fool me, but you can't fool God. Standing behind him, McCollis said with a shock that he was looking at the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, which had just emerged pale and enormous from the dissolving night. God sees everything, repeated Wilson. That's an advertisement, McCollis assured him, something that made him turn away from the window and look back into the room, but Wilson stood there a long time, his face close to the window pane, nodding into the twilight. By 6 o'clock, McCollis was worn out and grateful for the sound of a car stopping outside. It was one of the watchers of the night before who had promised to come back. So he cooked breakfast for 3, which he and the other man ate together. Wilson was quieter now, and McCollis went home to sleep. When he awoke 4 hours later and hurried back to the garage, Wilson was gone. His movements, he was on the foot all the time, were afterward traced to Port Roosevelt and then to Gads Hill, where he bought a sandwich and didn't need a cup of coffee. He must have been tired and walking slowly, for he didn't reach Gads Hill until noon. Thus far, there was no difficulty in accounting for his time. There were boys who had seen a man acting sort of crazy, and motorists at whom he stared oddly from the side of the road. Then for 3 hours, he disappeared from view. The police, on the strength of what he said to McCollis, that he had a way of finding out. Suppose that he spent that time going from garage to garage, thereabouts inquiring for a yellow car. This is very important. Wilson, George Wilson, Myrtle's husband, the woman who was murdered, or who was killed in a hit and run, he only looks like a fool. He now realizes he sees a dog collar, which is the collar from the dog that Tom bought Myrtle. He realizes she came home once from the city with a broken nose. He now is convinced she's cheating on him. And he's convinced that when she was running out onto the road at that yellow car, Gatsby's car, she was going to her lover, the man she was having an affair with, and he hit her and ran. So here's Wilson's strategy. It's very logical. It makes great sense. He's a mechanic. Don't you think that every car at some point needs to be serviced, if only for an oil change, he's going to go to every mechanic in the city of New York until he finds a mechanic who says, oh, I worked on a yellow car. Oh, who owned that car? Jay Gatsby of West Egg Village. He comes in once a month to have the oil changed and tires inflated. Hello? On the other hand, no garage man who had ever seen him ever came forward, and perhaps he had an easier, surer way of finding out than what he wanted to know. So that didn't, but 2:30, he was in West Egg, where he had asked someone the way to Gatsby's house. So by that time, he knew Gatsby's name. At 2 o'clock, Gatsby put on his bathing suit and left. Word with the butler that if anyone phoned, word was to be brought to him at the pool. He stopped at the garage for a pneumatic mattress that had amused his guests during the summer, and the chauffeur helped him pump it up. Then he gave instructions that the open car wasn't to be taken out under any circumstances, and this was strange because the right fender needed repair. That's the fender that killed Myrtle. Gatsby shouldered the mattress and started for the pool. Once he stopped and lifted it a little, and the chauffeur asked him if he needed help, but he shook his head and in a moment disappeared among the yellowing trees. No telephone message arrived, but the butler went without his sleep and waited until 4 o'clock, until long after there was anyone to give it to if it came. I have an idea that Gatsby himself didn't believe it would come, and perhaps he no longer cared. If that was true, he must have felt that he had lost the old warm world, paid a high price for living too long with a single dream. Paid a high price for living too long with a single dream. He must have looked up at the unfamiliar sky through frightening leaves and shivered as he found what a grotesque thing a rose is and how raw the sunlight was upon the scarcely created grass. A new world, material without being real, where poor ghosts, breathing dreams like air, drifting fortuitously about like that ashen, fantastic figure gliding toward him through the amorphous trees. The chauffeur, he was one of Wolfsheim's proteges, heard the shots. The chauffeur, who was one of Wolfsheim's proteges, heard the shots. Yes, those are gunshots. Afterward, he could only say that he hadn't thought anything much about them. I drove from the station directly to Gatsby's house, and my rushing anxiously up the front steps was the first thing that alarmed anyone. But they knew then, I firmly believe, with scarcely a word said, 4 of us, the chauffeur, butler, gardener, and I, hurried down to the pool. There was a faint, barely perceptible movement of the water as the fresh flow from one end urged its way toward the drain at the other. With little ripples that were hardly the shadows of waves, the laden mattress moved irregularly down the pool. A small gust of wind that scarcely corrugated the surface was enough to disturb its accidental course with its accidental burden. The touch of a cluster of leaves resolved it slowly, tracing like the leg of a compass the thin, red circle in the water. That would be the red of blood. It was after we started with Gatsby toward the house that the gardener saw Wilson's body a little way off in the grass, and the Holocaust was complete. What do you think happened?
Did Wilson attempt to murder Gatsby before Gatsby turned the tables and murdered Wilson?
What else could possibly be true? Because we won't find out till tomorrow. What are all the possibilities? Okay, whoa. I'm so... All right, Peter. Say that again. Did Wilson... Go ahead, Peter.
So did Wilson attempt to murder Gatsby, but Gatsby turned the tables and murdered Wilson?
What else is possible?
There could have been somebody else like near him because there's no way that the mechanic would have made sure that Gatsby was dead before killing him. If he tried to kill himself, he would have made sure Gatsby was dead. No. So somebody else could have been there and shot the mechanic before he killed Gatsby.
Oh, well, hold on. I'm playing out the murder-suicide. Wilson shoots and kills Gatsby. Gatsby falls into the pool in a circle of blood, and Wilson turns the gun on himself and kills himself. And then the other theory is there is an unknown third person who kills Wilson to protect Gatsby. Easy? Tom? Nick? Jordan?
The nameless butler?
That's what I was going to write. I was writing that as you said it. The butler did it. No, the butler didn't do it. Maybe I don't think he did it. The butler did. Listen, I'm going to give you your choices. This is, I can't, we'll find out tomorrow. Here, I will promise you one thing. Now, I admit I did not read ahead this chapter this week. I was busy, but I've read Gatsby a lot. So I will tell you one thing. I promise you. And one of these is true. One of the following possibilities happened. Then you just decide which one you want to happen or which one you like, oh no. Let's review. One of these is true. It's possible that Wilson attempted to murder Gatsby, but Gatsby turns the tables and murders Wilson. It's possible. It's possible that it's a murder-suicide. Wilson shoots and kills Gatsby. Gatsby falls into the pool, and Wilson turns the gun on himself and kills himself. It's possible that there's an unknown third person who kills Wilson to protect Gatsby. It's possible that Daisy, Tom, Nick, Jordan are somehow involved, especially Daisy. It's also possible that the butler did it. It really is. Now, let's look again. We know the following. We know that there were gunshots that were heard, and the chauffeur, butler, gardener, and Nick hurried down to the pool. We know there was a faint, barely perceptible movement of the water. Hold on. We know that there is a thin red circle in the water. We know that there's blood in the water. It's hard to determine at this time if there's a body in the water causing that blood or if that blood spilled over from, say, Wilson. It's a very complicated so far whodunit. I do believe there's clear evidence that Wilson is dead because it says it was after we started with Gatsby toward the house. That sort of indicates that Gatsby's alive. It was after we started with Gatsby toward the house that a gardener saw Wilson's body a little way off in the grass. Curiosity is killing the cat. Yeah, looks like it's playing out like that. Huh. Yeah, looks like we're doing pretty good there. It's a murder mystery. Looks like Wilson's dead. Looks like Gatsby might be a suspect. Hard to know. We're gonna find out tomorrow. I unfortunately know what happened. Okay, that's enough for today. Go have your lunch. I'm going to post, I had a busy day yesterday. Remember I had that doctor's appointment? I'll post chapter 7 notes for upload in chapter 8. I'll do that today. Keep doing your Black Lives Matter curriculum and memorize your Raven if you want an A from Edwards. Or don't complain. Or don't complain. Or don't complain. Tomorrow, all will be revealed. Okay, any questions? I'll post the homework now because I know I didn't do it yesterday. Is everybody okay?
Actually, just one quick question. What year is it right now in the book?
1922. All right, now, here's where we're at. Great Gatsby takes place approximately, it starts in the summer of 1922. In my world, summer starts in June. It goes through the 4th of July because they reference the 4th of July. We actually read the 4th of July chapter where it was the 4th of July in Gatsby on July 6th. We were only 2 days off. First class period. Yeah, we'll talk about the practice essay in a minute, Anaya. Right now, in Gatsby, last chapter was August. Right now, it is approaching September. Because our evidence is at the beginning of this chapter, the gardener says, I have to drain the pool because the leaves are starting to fall, and you don't want leaves in a pool. And Gatsby says, don't drain the pool. I haven't used it all summer. I want to go for a swim later. So if I had to answer this question in like a college professor's class, Gatsby takes place in June 1922 and goes to about September of 1922. Just about 3 to 4 months. And the flashback scenes to Louisville, Kentucky, where he met Daisy at Camp Taylor, those take place October through November of 1918. And then there's some other flashback to Tom and then she marries Tom, and I would say that's going to be harder for me to answer. But she marries Tom in August. Remember, it was so hot that a man passed out. That man that they called Biloxi. She marries Tom in August. So let's be logical. If she meets Gatsby in October 1918, then that means she marries Tom August 1919. Give or take. But she does marry Tom in August. So there's 3 times. You know what you would call that? You would call that well, I don't know if you want to get into this all now, but you would call that the time structure or time element in Gatsby. There, you have to remember, and we kind of focused on it, but we didn't laser focus on it. Gatsby relies quite a bit on flashback. Gatsby, I don't really know how many times, but I'd say 6 or 7 minimum. Nick, the story flashbacks to 1918 to 1919 many times, and telling the story of how Gatsby and Daisy met, how they lost each other, and how she compromised and married Tom because she's a practical lady. Okay? You are all doing awesome. I will post. Oh, Anaya, right. I'm not making the essay due Friday. I will put it on Google Classroom. I'm going to outline it on Friday, and it will be due Monday. Okay. You guys go get your lunch, and then I will see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m., and I will be traveling in the next hour because it's a long trip. I will be traveling. I'm already packed. I packed last night. In the next hour to 2 hours, I'm going to be traveling to West Egg Village, Long Island Sound, and I will read or visit Gatsby with you from his dock that looks over at Tom and Daisy's house. And here's the funny part. You know I will. I don't know. It's just the way I roll. Yo. So tomorrow we'll go to West Egg Village and we shall see Gatsby's dock where he longs for his lost love. If only he had searched harder, he might have found her. Mr. Edwards, will I find the lady of my dreams, the man of my dreams, like Quixote and Arthur and Gatsby and all those great chivalrous knights looking for something sacred and immortal and pure and wonderful? Of course you will.
I have a question.
I dare you to ask your question. I dare you. I triple dog dare you.
So for the assignment, the essay, do we have to think, like, come up with experiences that they would probably go through during that time, like from like
Sounds right to me. Yeah. If you think you can do it, that's a harder essay to write. To put Gatsby in historical context. Yeah. I will outline it on Friday so they don't so you have a fairly decent idea of how to the whole remember, whoa. The whole point of writing this essay is to switch the point of view. I spent an entire class period last week outlining the importance of point of view in literature. So we're going to switch the point of view from the rich and spoiled and radically shift the point of view to the servants and oppressed and disenfranchised and the immigrants and the children of slaves and all that. We're going to switch the point of view. Because we know one thing, Peter. We know that those people are in the novel, but they are in the novel as if they have no value. They serve their, fill in the blank. They serve with very little reward. They don't share in the American dream. They do what they're told when they're told to do it, which is why a gardener comes over in a raincoat to cut the lawn in the pouring rain. That's the American dream? Wait a minute. That's a very bad American dream. I even have to go out and cut the lawn in the rain. I can't even get the day off when it rains. No, you do what you're told. Remember, the very first thing we did was to find the American dream as American opportunity. And to some, there is opportunity. And to others, the doors are closed. And we're trying to find root causes of that. We're trying to fix that. The words that they use today are equality, equity, fairness, reparation. All right, go get your lunch. I'll be here tomorrow, 9:30. Oh, no, I won't. I'll be at
Bye.
West Egg. Bye. See you tomorrow from West Egg. All right, be careful, be good, be smart, be safe. All right, bye.